So if everyone's ready, my pro-constructive will start now. We affirm the resolution, framework, accountability. According to the Oxford Dictionary, criminal justice is a system of law enforcement that is directly involved in apprehending, prosecuting, defending, sentencing, and punishing those who are suspected or convicted of offenses. Thus, for criminal justice, holding the legally responsible for their actions needs to be prioritized no matter of age, gender, ethnicity, and other barriers. Juvenile justice system ability the accountability of juvenile offenders. Abusive manipulation of justice system conducted by writing from Villanova University School of Law in Georgia, only 1/3 of the juvenile offenders in the law. Just juvenile offenders who commit serious violence can be transferred into the court. So juvenile offenders also that the awareness of transfer law may prevent them from committing their crimes in the first place. But further, among those who are aware of transfer law, none of them thought it would be actually enforced against them. Many assume that it would be separate in juvenile. Rock and supports by finding that many juvenile offenders did not think that they will receive a serious punishment if apprehended. Claim 99 further said juvenile justice system fails to provide meaningful sanctions until it's too late. Thus, it is apparent that the juvenile justice system has a counter-deterrent effect on juvenile offenders, with many abusing the protection that they receive from the system. Subpoint B, rehabilitation in juvenile justice system has little influence on offenders. According to the analysis that reviews interventions aimed at decreasing recidivism in juveniles, interventions, both are the most common methods of rehabilitation in juvenile detention centers, has negative recidivism 8% and 2% respectively. Gavin further said the scare straight programs, shock incarceration programs, and boot camps have all proved ineffective in reducing recidivism in juvenile offenders, concluding that the precautions took under the juvenile justice system are ineffective. While holding juvenile offenders less accountable for their crimes, the juvenile justice system also failed to prevent recidivism. The primary goal of the juvenile justice system are to protect and help people integrate into society. Juvenile detention. Thomas Opor suggests that mental health is a serious concern in juvenile detention centers. Sources estimate that 2/3 of young people in detention centers who meet the criteria of having mental disorder, a little more than a third needs ongoing clinical care, twice the rate of the general adolescent population. In addition, detention also increases recidivism. According to an evaluation of secure detention in Wisconsin, the 4 county studies, 70% of youth held in secure detention were arrested or returned to secure detention within 1 year of release. Further said detention also puts youth into the juvenile and criminal justice system, where detained youth face a greater probability of having a petition filed at intake by 6.2%, having a petition filed by state attorney by 9%, and receiving full judicial interventions by 8.2% than youth not detained. Subpoint B, financial issues push teen further into the system. According to Juvenile Law Center, juvenile fines and fees recreate economic inequities. They fairly push youth in poverty deeper into the juvenile justice system. Youth who cannot afford to pay these costs are more likely to be incarcerated, face prolonged prison time, and remain on probation longer, while youth with financial sources are more likely to stay at home and access effective community-based service and treatment. Jennings 16 further said fines and fees actually increases recidivism. Young people with justice-related debts are more likely to reoffend than their debt-free peers. The likelihood of reoffending increases and as fines and fees increase. This makes community less equal, adding inequalities to the society. And with all of the reason above, we're never so proud to affirm. Thank you.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Pull the timer. Okay. Is anyone not ready? All right.
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Cool. We negate. In order to negate, we have to provide a framework of alleviating poverty or structural violence. Defined in 14. Structural violence has been used to designate people who experience violence owing to extreme poverty, violence which includes the highest rate of disease and health, death, unemployment, homelessness, lack of education, powerlessness, and shared fate of miseries. 2 justifications. First, the resolution's qualification of the crimes as violent implies that the goal of this resolution is minimizing real-world violence. Second, responding to violence with violence is counterproductive and has no impact. Our sole contention is perpetuating the cycle of poverty. Prior to the war on crime, children were not tried as adults. The war on crime shifted the U.S.'s policy on crime even towards children. For 19 contextualizes. Before Tough on Crime, the juvenile correction system was aimed at rehabilitating juvenile offenders instead of incarcerating them. The goal was to reform juvenile offenders so that they would not grow up to become adult offenders. Today, juveniles are charged as adult criminals, can be sent to adult prisons, given harsher sentences, and have adult criminal records that prevent them from gaining employment and student financial aid. Moreover, the U.S. has not ratified the Convention on the Rights of Children. Most of it have. Therefore, the major country concerns is the U.S. Look 14 further contextualizes. The U.S. is the only developed nation that tries its youngest offenders in its regular criminal courts without modified procedures. By comparison, in Scandinavian countries, juveniles cannot be punished regardless of the seriousness of their crime. We say that those systems are good because living in poor circumstances as a child empirically raises the probability of violent crime, increasing the probability of injustice. As Maki explains, the longer a child lives in poor circumstances, the higher their subsequent risk for violent criminality. Indeed, Serious Law 14 quantifies children of parents in the lowest income quintiles experience a 7-fold increased rate of being convicted of violent criminality. This perpetuates a cycle of poverty. Janetta 17 explains, justice system responses greatly affect the life prospect of vulnerable youth, restricting their access to opportunity. Segregation separates vulnerable people from opportunity and exposes them to high levels of crime. Poverty creates conditions that contribute to offending. This leads to high levels of involvement with the criminal justice system among young people, which can have lasting negative consequences for the development. Simply acquiring a criminal record as a teenager depresses lifetime family income. Structural inequities can lead to justice involvement. Justice involvement can lead or exacerbate these inequities. Indeed, a teen conviction decreases family incomes. Blumenthal 16 explains of people who would have had a teen conviction but did not get one, the improvement in family income will be $23,000. This means that not convicting a teen of a crime increases their family's income, decreasing the probability of being stuck in poverty. The reverse thus decreases income. This logically makes sense. Those who commit crimes require legal fees and bail to be paid by their families, which is expensive for those in poverty. We solve for 3 reasons. First is increasing wages. Currently, permanent records will prevent a child from having a fresh start. Contest 19 explains if preteens or teens are tried and convicted as an adult, then this action stays on their permanent record. People who are convicted of a violent felony have an exceptionally difficult time trying to find employment in our current economy. White males with felony conviction receive a 17% callback rate, the highest of any demographic. Fortunately, NCSL 16 finds that all states have some sort of procedures that allows juveniles to petition to expunge their record. Whereas legal match 21 explains most states will not expunge violent felonies for adults, meaning benefits of forgiveness are unique to our side. The impact is increasing wages, as Prescott 19 quantified. Those who obtain expungement experience a sharp upturn in the wage and employment trajectories. On average, within 1 year, wages go up by 22%, in effect driven by unemployment jobs. Second is recidivism. Charging increases crime. Capital quantified. Youth who receive adult sentences are likely to receive juvenile sentences. Third is labeling theory. According to labeling theory, quote, official efforts to control crime often have increasing crime. Other than view and treat these people as criminals, and increases the likelihood of subsequent for several reasons. Labeled individuals may have trouble in obtaining legitimate employment. Labeled individuals may find people who are reluctant to associate with them, and they may associate other criminals. This fosters the social learning of crime. Labeled individuals come to view themselves as criminals and act as such. End quote. Cycle poverty and cycle crime are the greatest injustices in society.
Time.
Thank you. The first question.
Yeah, so whenever you're ready, my time will start now. So my first question for you is, do you agree the juvenile justice system is a part of the justice of our country that we're talking about?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because like we tell you that the principle of criminal justice system is 5 things according to the object. I think that we need to somehow give juveniles their accountability, even though we operate the system, because that is a part of criminal justice.
Like under juvenile system, you're still giving them sentences. The judge is doing what they like deem fit. Like I don't know.
You are generally more probably deserve harsher punishment.
Like so, how accountability? How do you measure there's more accountability or like just on our side?
Well, for example, like you try. Like, if you try them as adults, there's like a crime, and you will get.
So in juvenile, like that's a bad, and like a person that's like really rich and steals. You think that they should deserve it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Like I guess there is a formal measure of that, but like don't you think that by lowering the accountability of juveniles is somehow not consistent with the purpose of criminal justice?
Not consistent. Like you're rehabilitating, putting them to be integrating back into society.
Well, but isn't that the same thing for adult justice system?
No, adult system focuses on treatment instead of rehabilitation.
Okay, never mind. I think you have a question.
Okay, let's talk about like you give me a lot of statistics as to why the juvenile system currently is like not as good as we want it to be, right? I think we agree on that. But can you give me like a counterfactual as to how they improve under your side? Because I don't really get any evidence as to how like under the adult system like mental health is better.
Well, but isn't that enough? Because like we're saying that the juvenile justice system shouldn't exist in the first place.
It's not, because if you put them into an adult system, there's a chance of being like much worse, right? Which means you don't really improve the lives of these.
Well, but like we don't need to provide you that evidence. That is.
Yeah, you do. Its comparison is whether or not you should put them into the adult system, right?
But like if you are not putting them into the juvenile system, where else would you put them? Like are we having like this new system for them? We're like I don't understand your question.
If you put them into the adult system, and you don't tell us the comparative is better, why is there a reason to put them into the adult system? You're just making it worse then, right?
Well, do you have any evidence that their life is worse? Because I don't really understand why.
Yeah, like look at our case.
Why is it my duty to that we're? Never mind. What are you saying?
Our side, like when you put the records, which increases their income by 22%. Well, you guys don't offer any evidence.
Time. Pro rebuttal.
Can I use the prep time?
Running prep.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, running prep roll side and time starts.
stop right now. My time starts now. So first, they claim about the lengthier crime. First, I think our court is humane enough because according to the researchers at the R&D Corporation in the US, I found that people have actually a shorter time in the adult prison than in the juvenile prison when they are only of 27% of their actual sentencing. Then they talk about felony, they give the example of felony. But felony is just only part of the violent crimes, and and only about hundreds of felonies among one state. Right? And then the Supreme Court held that juveniles may be detained without bail pending adjudications because preventive detention protects the juvenile and society and is not intended to punish the juvenile. So which means that juvenile system has no punishment elements in it. And offender was cast as a victim of his or lack of insight. And by implications, unless and until the offender was corrected by the expert, she or he could not be treated as subjects. It was argued that rehabilitation faces an associated and fundamental moral problem rooted in the attempts to psychologically coerce change. Then the shift from subject to objects of correctional rehabilitation implies more coercive and utilitarian concepts of rehabilitation, which leaves the individual under much more abuse of power of punish. I just find that through the public interest. Then they came out labeling theories. So first, Malfittis proposes that the increased crime in 80 and 1990 was primarily an increase in the prevalence of adolescent offending, and that was primarily a decrease in the prevalence of adolescent offending, not the frequency of it, which means rehabilitation has no effect at all. And incarcerating high youth may in fact increase crime by aggravating the youth who are detained. Recent evaluation in Wisconsin, conducted by the state's Joint Legislative Audit Committee, reported that in the 4-county study, 70% of youth held in secure detention were rearrested or returned to secure detention within 1 year of release, and 60% of the youth studied were returned to the Department of Youth Services within 3 years. The most significant predictors of recidivism was prior commitment. The odds of returning to DYS increased 13.5 times for youth with a prior commitment, which means that they need harsher punishment. And juvenile offenders do not receive individualized the dispositions because the juvenile justice system does not have the resources to provide specialized treatment according to the studies of Boston University. So, and there's no education, there's almost zero educations in the juvenile system. According to Addie Alice, we had a Capitol Hill briefing on youth solitary confinement in August. We had no schooling when I was in lockdown. Maybe a book if a friend had ones to share. And Alice was 16 years old when he was charged with a manslaughter. A class actions lawsuit settled with public interest groups in 2010 alleged that Leicester Juvenile lawsuits failed to provide constitutionally adequate kids tenure, including who graduated without learning how to read. Capability for educating youth is translated to a game finger pointing, like the local Department of Education Bureau of Prisons, and vice versa.
I'm going to pull out my disad file. Give me a minute of prep, starting now. "18 seconds. Is that even enough? Yeah, that's fine. That's my flow. Okay, before the time starts, I'm just gonna signpost because, all right. Time starts now. They don't signpost in their rebuttal, but I know they weren't already got dropped in labeling theory. Give it less about Reagan's war crime. Times have changed, ladies and gentlemen. On side prop, we say that injustice is just everywhere. Extend our Sarvasan 14 card, more likely to commit violent crimes. This in and of itself wins us this round. Going down this line of reasoning, we don't need the juvenile justice system, but the adult system is in pure worse, meaning we're still going to prefer our side. Look, at the end of the day, we prefer a world with less punishment for those facing violence because we're pressured by society many times because they had no alternative than to be shackle chains. At the end, we reject their framework of accountability, because they're basically making the argument that we should punish all youth as if they were identical to adults. As I made this analogy yesterday, this is they're going to punish a 19-month-old as an adult. This in and of itself is just not these exact opponents from the front running make decisions. So punishing them decreases the probability of being able to rehabilitate, increasing net crime. Furthermore, we say that punishment in and of itself is wrong because of labeling theory, which basically got dropped. They just talked about the 1980s. I mean, it's going to lead to more crime because these people are criminals perpetuating the cycle of crime. We say that if we prove the adult system is worse than the juvenile justice system, we win this debate because they have no counterfactual. So when they keep reading statistics of programs not working, they never prove why their programs do work. So they lost this round. The first voting issue I'm going to talk about is accountability, because I think we can all agree that accountability for criminals also requires accountability on behalf of the criminal justice system. Thanks to my partner Diego from last week, we basically talked about how the state is violent. That is in and of itself is a reason to reject this violence in the criminal justice system. Two reasons why the criminal justice system is not just. One, their case. If they don't know about If juveniles don't know about transferring to the adult system, we say forcing them into it is not just. Second is the state. I'm going to read a disadvantage because according to Bourgeois 19 of the New England Journal of Medicine, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, they represent a form of structural violence called hyperincarceration because the U.S. imprisons greater numbers of people than any one other country, making 70 million U.S. citizens have criminal records, which means that these people are facing structural violence, they're unable to find work, and therefore their only option is crime. As a result of them choosing crime, this leads to more net crime, which leads to less net accountability. Next voting issue, they have no alternative. Preferred solutions, which is to negate, as we don't unjustly treat those in poverty, who again are 7 times more likely to commit crime. For example, our wages plan, if you will, our solution, it will solve because it increases wages by 22%, decreasing poverty. To reintegrate people into society, we are not forcing those people in poverty into a cycle of crime, meaning on net, we have less crime on our side, we are better for society. And then I guess specifically responding to their second contention study, they talk something about mental health, and then they keep ranting on how the juveniles happen. They talk about like fines and fees, how you can't pay to get incarcerated, but this doesn't for adults, these fines and fees. Their entire case depends on our system being bad, but they don't prove why they're better. We agree that our system is worse because of advantages. The first is recidivism, because according to 2014, adult sentences are 5 times more likely to recidivate. Those juvenile sections, there's less accountability on time. The next is you can literally send our clean to drop. Our argument is that people in poverty are 7 times more crime, and they're 7 times more likely to get treated by 7 times more likely to force into a cycle of crime. We say that at the end of the day, labeling theory wins the state because labeling people as criminals leads to them believing that they're criminals, perpetuating a cycle of crime.
Crossfire.
Can I have a prep time?
I'm muted. Do you need prep?
Running prep.
Do you need prep? Okay. Sure. You can. Whatever.
Running prep for pro side and time starts.
Okay, I can start right here.
All right. Since I spoke second, you have the first question.
Okay. Why do you think the poverty is only
We're not. That's a strong argument. Our argument is people are in poverty, therefore they're more likely to crime. Therefore,
yeah,
they're
but
more.
like juvenile court also juvenile court also create the poverty, right?
We're just
Do you agree
what we're
with that?
saying is that people who commit crime. Okay, think about it. How I want to answer your question. I'm going to answer your question is basically that the juvenile system is necessary. We're saying the adult system is worse because of things like incarceration. And
Yeah, that's like also our strategy. Your system is we're not saying like our
okay, ours is worse. Then have you proven full time in why your systems are?
Yes, I think so.
Extend one of the cards then. Okay, whatever. Seeing as your side has 7 million people unable to find work because they are having a criminal record, they're less likely to find work. Why is your system better?
Pardon me? Can you repeat the question?
Extending the mass incarceration DA, seeing as 70 million people have a criminal record and have a lower probability of finding a job, why is this system better for America?
I mean, like, juvenile justice system will do the same thing, right?
That's not really answering my question because in the juvenile justice system, I guess we read the wages thing, right? We say that we can expunge criminal records from youth, but not from adults, meaning this benefit of wage increase is unique to our side, whereas you don't have any wage increase. Yeah, you can have another question. Yeah, I can wait. I don't really have a question.
So, what about the minority groups that have been?
Groups, isn't this just disproving your point? Because the minority groups are also disproportionately more likely to get treated harshly by the criminal justice system. Therefore, it's
Yeah, but like they're also like going to disproportionately treated harshly in the juvenile system.
Facilities with things like what's the word for it? With things like the death penalty, for instance, like it's just a hypothetical situation. With this inhumane treatment, we think that these minorities are going to face worse treatment on your side because at least on our side we can forgive them and let them find a job. I'm gonna ask
but like
question.
among all
Okay. Huh? What was it?
But like among all Washington State youth, African American youth were 4 times as likely as Caucasians youth to be sentenced with the violent crimes. How about that? And they're like more likely to be like sent to the juvenile system and to try it there.
But we say that this also applies to the adult system because if you look at things like the George Floyd protests, you can see that Black Americans face racism in the criminal justice system. This is a reason to abolish it, but we're not going to go that far. Also, I'm from Washington.
Just run like 20 seconds prep time.
Okay, 20-second prep time for pro side and
Yeah.
time starts. Time's up.
Okay, I think I'm ready. So if judges ready, opponents ready, my summary speech will start now. Before I move to the body of my summary, I'd like to address a bit on why you should buy our framework. We tell you about accountability, which is a fundamental thing according to the Oxford Dictionary for the criminal justice system to work in the first place. And since our opponent emphasis on minimizing total violence in society, I don't think that if we operate a criminal justice system where the fundamental rules of it is not operating well enough, and like juvenile criminals are not held accountable for the crimes that they deserve to be held, we don't think that it is going to minimize violence, which we proved in our first contention that there is a lot of violent teenagers who are abusing or manipulating the protection that they receive from the juvenile justice system. And now let's look at our case. Again, our opponent have two central, I guess, themes in their whole case, which with one contention of alleviating poverty and minimizing violence. So like, let's look at their first place. They tell you that like somehow by like having a juvenile justice system, we can perpetuate the issue of poverty because it offers them more opportunities to like find jobs in the future, or like by keeping the confidentiality of like their trials, it will like decrease their probability of not like unemployment. But however, we tell you that poverty is actually an issue that's created by the juvenile justice system itself, which in our second contention subpoint B, we tell you that juvenile fines and fees recreate economic inequalities, and it unfairly push youth in poverty deeper into the juvenile justice system because they cannot afford to pay these costs. So by what this means is that it not only does the juvenile detention centers make the problem of poverty more severe for some juvenile offenders, it also makes the communities less safe because according to our Jennings 16 card, fines and fees actually increase recidivism, which means that those people who cannot afford to pay these fees and are in poverty in the first place are also likely to reoffend. And now let's look at our case. In our first contention, we basically told you that, again, like there is abusive manipulation going on with violent teenagers, and by having a juvenile justice system, it is actually increasing their likelihood to commit violent crimes because they think they're protected and they wouldn't receive any harsh punishment under the juvenile court. And under our second subpoint, we tell you that rehabilitation in the juvenile justice system does not have any influence on offenders, and it actually even has negative influence on recidivism. And in our second contention, we tell you that apart from maintaining public safety, the primary goal of the juvenile justice system is to help the youth and protect them and, like, I guess, facilitate them to reintegrate back into society. But this system also fails to do this by the two ways we tell you, because of juvenile detention centers increase probability of depression and other mental illness, as well as the economic issue that I have already addressed previously in this summary. So with all of the reasons above, I think you should vote for pro. Thank you.
Can you send us the Jennings card?
Yes. Hang on.
So, you wanna check evidence?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Okay, time starts.
now.
Do you need a card or do you just want the link?
Card.
Oh wait. Oh sorry.
Most accessible format you can. Is this a PDF? It is
Yes.
a PDF. Do you know what page it's
But
on?
huh?
Oh, is it
I'll
the
send you
app?
the code.
Huh.
There is a link that quoted this study, so if you want that link, I can send that to you too.
Okay. Do we need prep? Let's start like let's just use a bit of prep. We have a lot.
Okay, so running
Sure.
for conside.
Yeah.
Okay, time starts.
Yeah. Pause. Oh. Wait, can you send us your definition for accountability or wherever you got it from? The Oxford
Oh.
definition.
Okay, no, like the Oxford definition is for criminal justice system, and the
Does it
accountability.
say accountability?
Huh? Pardon me?
Did it say accountability?
Oh, that definition is from another card. I can send you the thing.
Oh,
right now.
okay, that's fine. Start, yeah. Do you have the source? Oh, okay, you do have the
Yes.
source. Go ahead and resume prep.
All right. I think we're good. All right. Is everyone good? Here we go. I have 3 questions. Firstly, which side is more accountable? Secondly, which side leads to more poverty? Which side is more coercive? And lastly, on rehabilitation. Let's first talk about accountability, which is basically their framework. Right? They tell you a lot about how, because teens don't expect them to be transferred to adult courts, they need to be held more accountable to their action. Right? Notice the logical link, like the mental hoops you have to jump through to get to that conclusion. Right? Just because a teen doesn't understand that they don't need to go through, they think they won't go to adult court, doesn't necessarily mean they aren't being held accountable for their action, right? Like the judge is still giving them a sentence. They need to prove to you exactly why on their side of the house there's a degree of accountability there being more on their side, right? Notice how they never actually quantified this impact either, right? But more importantly, we say you have to hold the state accountable as well, right? Because the state is what's pushing these people into positions of poverty, which forces them to commit the crime. If any side wants to have more accountability, it's to push the accountability of the state. They cause poverty and mass incarceration, which that forces these juveniles to commit these crimes. Which on our side we give them a more lenient sentence, in which case they can better rehabilitate, and we have more accountability to the state as well. Let's go on to poverty, right? They basically drop our entire case on the point of poverty, right? We told you that we basically increase wages because it allows people to expunge. We allow juveniles to expunge records, which increases income by 22%, right? The only response we heard to this was that, oh, but juveniles can also have they have to pay legal fees, and because of this, they'll basically push them back into poverty, right? And notice how this is non-needed because they never actually proved to you why under the adult system they somehow have less legal fees, right? In other words, we think that even if it is the case that they have legal fees on our side of the house, we think that what happens then is that after they come out of jail, they can expunge their records. While uniquely in adult system, it's very rare for them to expunge violent felonies, which then means that we have unique access to our impact, which is a 22% increase on income. You could basically extend this evidence, right? More importantly, they never actually responded to Andrew's DA on mass incarceration, right? We told you there's 70 million people that have criminal records, which substantially lowers the probability of getting a job. Notice how they never actually responded to this, because under the adult system, mass incarceration is exacerbated. Well, they never actually responded to this, which means you can extend this as well. Let's talk about rehabilitation, right? The only response we heard to this whole point about rehabilitation and how we improve teens, juveniles' lives was that, oh, but if you rehabilitate them, it's more coercive. Do some weighing here. What's more coercive, right? Teaching a teen how to do a job so they don't need to force to commit crimes, or you give them increased sentences, which gives them a 5 times more likelihood into recidivate because they're forced by the state to do things because the state has failed them. What is more coercive? The state forcing them to do crimes, or us giving them a chance at a better shot in life, right? The only response we heard to the Council 14 evidence about how it's 5 times more likely for them to recidivate was that there's a negative effect, right? Okay, even if it is true, weigh the logic, because the evidence here is a wash, right? Under a teen system, you probably can get more access state education systems, which means that you basically are able to rehabilitate, right? For all these reasons, you have to vote us because we decrease poverty and they don't prove to you why uniquely on their side it's better.
We're open for cross-X.
Okay, so if you guys are ready, I believe that we have the first question. So yeah, so my time will start now. So my first question to you is that since you guys prioritize minimizing violence so much, do you think like for example, the first point of our first condition, we tell you that juveniles abuse the protection they get from the juvenile justice system. Do you think that's gonna help with minimizing violence? Because they think that they wouldn't
look,
receive.
do you know what I think is going to help minimize violence? Having quantified statistics in your case, which you don't have. What we have on our case is we tell you that recidivism rate in your system is 5 times higher than our system. So are you really minimizing violence, or are we minimizing violence? We say negating is going to minimize violence. I'm going to ask you have a problem. So
sure.
No, we answered your question. I'm going to ask you a question. So when we talk about labeling criminals and you don't respond to this, would you say that, let's say we labeled you as a criminal, why would you not commit a crime?
What do you mean? Why would I not commit a crime?
I guess let me just put it bluntly. Do you have a response to labeling theory?
Well, what do you mean by that? Like
our argument that didn't get responded to is at the bottom of our case. Basically, our logic is that when you label people as criminals, they see themselves as an outgroup and they'll commit more crime. So what's your response?
Well, I don't see why are you saying that once they get labeled as a criminal, they won't be able to find a job?
Not necessarily. We're saying probability. We're not going
aren't
the black and white
also labeled as a criminal even under the I don't understand how this works, but if we say if we don't label a juvenile offender as a criminal under the juvenile justice system, wouldn't that again go back to the accountability issue? Because
they're not about accountability. Can we agree on a piece of framing? If the people have to be held accountable, can we agree the state also has to be held accountable?
I guess yes.
Great,
I'm
awesome.
not exactly sure.
The rest of this time for yourself.
What do you mean?
But the remaining minute.
Why does holding the state accountable equal to or I guess why is that even
No, because we say that when you're going to create a cycle of crime, this creates less accountability on your side, because what the state is basically doing is the state is punishing these people, but as a result there's more crime on your side, which you haven't refuted. So when there's more crime on your side, there's less accountability because they're decreasing social cohesion. So would you say there's more accountability on your side or our side? Because we would say it's our side.
Well, why? Because we are holding the people who committed
because
crimes
of our cycle of crime impacts, it basically got dropped. We have 4 links and a terminal impact, whereas you just have some sprinkled in links, and I'm not really sure what your impact is at this point.
Well, but according to our definition of accountability, which you checked, we say that we need to impose proper sanctions to people who violate the law. But does the juvenile justice system?
Oh, okay. Speaking of this. Let's say I am a 19-month-old and I assault my parents. Do I go to prison?
Well, that is a very what is the chance for that to happen?
Yes or no?
What?
You violate your own principle.
Roll final focus.
Let's just run the rest of our prep.
Okay, for pro side, you still have 35 seconds and time starts. Time's up.
Okay, let me just time myself. So my time starts now. The reason why you should vote for us can be reduced into three aspects. First, we have told you that on the necessity of making a separate tier of legal system that will eventually spoil the kids, we give stats that prove the ineffectiveness of adult prison by saying, according to the evaluation of secure detention in Wisconsin conducted by the state's Joint Legislative Audit Committee, in the 4-county study, 70% of youth held in secure detention were arrested or returned to secure detention within 1 year of release. Second, we have proved that detention center is not protecting the children and get them reintegrated into society. However, it fails to do both things. No matter the researchers estimate that 2/3 of young people in detention centers could meet the criteria for having a mental disorder, a little more than a third need ongoing clinical care, or lack of education, are signing with our point. Thirdly, the detention centers is not as lenient or charitable as you might think. It is a costly social organization that requires the detainees to pay fines in order to get them out of it. This not only creates a new privilege, but also incapable of deterring the people, because that many of the recent violent juvenile crimes, however, were committed by juveniles from middle class, suburban backgrounds, and they can easily get away with the detention. Also, they have totally dropped our first point about juvenile abuse and the protection of juvenile system. And in response, researchers at the R&D corporations in the USA found that there are intermediate sanctions which survey prisoners equipped with prison in terms of punitiveness. For some individuals, intensive forms of probation may actually mean the more dreaded penalty. And more recently, Dernask has specifically explored the pains of probation as experienced in Romania. Alongside deprivations of time and the other practical and financial costs of compliance and limitations on their autonomy and privacy, probationers are also reported the pain of the forced return to the office and the pain of a life lived under a constant threat. Thus, in conclusion, juvenile system cannot achieve the initial goal that they want, which is to be punishing and rehabilitative. Also, juvenile system creates a new tool to separate different peoples, which include ethnicity and social income used to be sentenced with violent crimes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna take 3 seconds of prep time. Hold on, where's my flow? 3 seconds of prep time starting now. All right, that's enough. That was 5 seconds. It doesn't matter. Anyone not ready? I'm gonna quote their final focus verbatim. Quote, ineffectiveness of adult prison, end quote. How funny can this get? They're basically conceding their own case when they say that the adult prison system is ineffective in their final focus. At the end of the day, we win this debate because our cycle of crime disproves their accountability framework. The state is not accountable under their side, and we say the state must be held to the same standard as we all agreed in Grand Crossfire. 19-month-olds, under their logic, have to be held accountable, but they say no, and they draw the line there. We say that 18-year-olds draw the line because our empirics got dropped. 3 themes in this speech. Number 1, why is there a cycle of crime? 5 reasons. Number 1, wages. We say increase in wages is unique to our side. This didn't get responded to. More wages, it necessarily means more jobs because you don't have a wage unless you have a job. Second reason, recidivism. Our drop Castro 14 card tells you there's 5 times more recidivism in the adult system. This got dropped. Third reason, labeling. Criminals see themselves as an outgroup and therefore they commit more crime because society is fundamentally excluding people who they see as bad or as criminal. As a result, there's more crime. Fourth reason, poverty. Extend our 7 times more likely card. This got dropped. 7 times more likely to commit crime for those in poverty. Fifth reason, their case, fines and fees. We say this is non-unique, but either way, this forces people to pay, meaning it's going to make more crime. The terminal impact is less social cohesion and less state accountability because there's more crime and less social stability. We went on their framework. Second theme, why does this outweigh their entire case? Because this goal of focusing on retribution, which is their case, this has to be deterring crime. We've proven there's more crime, so there's no retribution, there's no accountability. Third theme, mass incarceration DA. This is an independent reason to vote for us because we say those with criminal records can't find a job, so we solve with our wages advantage. At the end of the day, their side is far worse. When the state has failed the marginalized, it's clear that punishment is not the way forward. Forgiveness of those facing structural violence, which they haven't once said in this debate, is. Therefore, negate.
Doesn't judge want to give some feedbacks or comments?
I think we're just waiting for the results, like the voting results to come out first, and then we'll
Okay.
come back.
Okay.
Result comes out and it's 805 goes to the Kansai, so congrats to the Kansai. I'm just gonna give a really brief comment. I generally think like a lot of times Kansai presents us a lot of some extreme cases like the 19-month-olds, even though I know like that's a very individual case, but I feel like the pro side can do a better job in giving us a quicker answer. A lot of times, even though like con side it does not sound convincing enough, I feel like the pro side was not quick enough to rebut and to block their points. Um, to be more detailed, like I think like you guys didn't attack effectively in the con side's simulations about their flaws in their simulated system, like criminal justice system, and also just as con side kept saying in their crossfire, I feel like you guys can equip with more cards in here, like in the future debate. I feel like a lot of times you guys were just blocked and didn't really know how to answer. But yeah, good job on both sides.
Congratulations to the con side. So both the teams, you guys did a very fabulous job. I only have to say one thing, that the reason why con they won this round because their facts were a little bit more diverse. Diverse in a sense, this topic is related to law. So their facts were coming not just from the laws of United States, they were also referring to Scandinavian laws. So the pro side, you should have had more diverse jurisdictional facts in your speeches. That would have given you the edge. But anyway, for future reference, when you have a topic related to law, try to gather as many facts from different jurisdictions to counter your opponents. That will give you an edge. Apart from that, both sides were really fabulous. Thank you. Good luck for future and have a pleasant afternoon ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So my vote is for con side, and I really like the new strategy and how they mold the whole resolution towards your side. It is a very fabulous and fantastic way. I have only one comment for pro side, that due to the lack of confidence and due to the lack of convincing power, you fail to win this debate. But although you have a very good and solid point, but unfortunately you have a lack of confidence and lack of convincing power, which is very useful for you in next debate competitions. Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations to the con team. I think the pro team could make good use of the crossfires. I think they made it a bit easy for the con team, especially during the crossfires. They didn't provide adequate responses to most of their questions, and also they didn't ask compelling questions to it in the case of the con team. And also a few notes, especially on the contention of poverty. I believe most of the counter arguments of the pro side was quite weak, and they could improve on it going forward. And once again, I want to congratulate the con team and all the best in your future tournaments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there other feedback? If not, I'm gonna go eat.
No, there is no feedback from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
I see one
Thank
of the
you.
judges is lagging. Does Sheldon have anything?
Yeah.
I think something wrong with Sheldon's internet. So by the way, he will give us his. Oh, Sheldon, you're back. It's your turn. Give your oral feedback.
Okay. My internet just broke down for like a couple minutes, which kind of broke me out. So, okay. So I'm the last judge to give feedback, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So finally, I just want to say congratulations to both teams. You guys both have done a great job. I also vote for the Kang side because relatively the Kang side is a little bit better in terms of defending their own contentions while trying to find weaknesses in their opponents' points. Let's see. So for the pro side, I think the pro side do have a number of great arguments, but quite a lot of them are, I think, you guys can give your contentions a little bit more consideration and development. For instance, especially during the rebuttal speech, the second speaker said, the second speaker have gave us points like our court is humane enough. Juvenile systems has no punishment systems. Juvenile system don't have enough education resources. I think these points, like, you need to back this up with more specific citations of your evidence. Otherwise, we won't be able to believe what you're talking about. It is not enough to just say, according to blah, 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 this is what we conclude. It will be more convincing if you can, cite more specifically, okay? For the Kang debaters, for the Kang side, there are also a number of things I wish you guys could think about. For instance, poverty, and labeling people as criminals. Yeah, stuff like this. Like, this is like a discussion of the current criminal system. I think it's fine, but like, this actually raised a more interesting question about how our society should treat criminals, not just juveniles, but also adults. Should we label adult criminals as criminals? And if we do that, they might, like, their future, their ability to obtain employment, and their ability to get out of poverty could be in some sort of jeopardy. So I think these points actually point toward this question instead of directly responding to our resolution we are debating today. So so I think how to make a better use out of these points could be something you can think about in the future. And one last thing I want to mention is I am kind of surprised. I am kind of surprised that none of the debaters have given a really deep dive, a really deep exploration about how different juveniles and adults are. How different, for instance, their brain, their mindset work, and how different or how similar these two types of people are. And that's why they might deserve a better, or do they deserve to use the same treatment system after they have done some crime. So I think this could be something both sides could think about. Instead of putting a lot of focus in what is the current system that treats criminals, because we can actually, like, the current system can be improved. The current system to treat both juveniles and adults can be improved. But I think this topic is actually guiding us to think about how different or how similar adults and juveniles actually are. And that is a question that could lead to the answer: do they deserve to be treated in the same system, or do we need to come up with a special system for the juveniles, right? Yeah, I think that's something you could think about, and I think that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges. Thank you, opponents.
Thank you, opponent.